In the quiet tree-lined streets of Springfield, Missouri, a house stood like any other. White siding, a well-kept lawn, the kind of place where neighbors waved in passing. It was an unremarkable home in an unremarkable neighborhood, where life unfolded in predictable rhythms. But behind its ordinary facade lay a story so twisted, so deeply unsettling, that it would grip the nation and leave questions that linger to this day. This is the story of Dee Dee Blanchard, a woman whose life and death would expose the darkest corners of human deception. It begins with what appeared to be a mother's love, a bond so strong it seemed unshakable. Claudine Dee Dee Blanchard was a voted caregiver, or so it seemed. Her daughter, Gypsy Rose, was the center of her world, a fragile girl whose life had been defined by illness from the moment she drew her first breath. Gypsy was said to suffer from a litany of ailments: leukemia, muscular dystrophy, epilepsy, asthma, conditions that left her confined to a wheelchair, dependent on a feeding tube, and in constant need of medical attention. To the outside world, theirs was a bond of unbreakable devotion, built on sacrifice and selflessness. Dee Dee spoke of sleepless nights tending to her daughter's needs, of endless doctor's appointments, of the financial strain of medical bills. She was seen as a modern-day saint, a woman who had given everything for her child. Strangers admired her, neighbors offered help, and the community rallied around them. But the truth was far more sinister than anyone could have imagined. Gypsy Rose was not the sickly child the world believed her to be. The illnesses, the disabilities, the endless treatments, none of it was real. Dee had spent years crafting an elaborate fiction, ensnaring her daughter in a web of lies so intricate that escape seemed impossible. The psychological toll on Gypsy was profound, eroding her sense of self and her understanding of reality. The signs were there if you knew where to look. Gypsy's medical records were a patchwork of inconsistencies, shifting diagnoses, and treatments that kept her in a state of perpetual dependence. Doctors were baffled, but few questioned the story Dee Dee presented. Who would suspect a mother of harming her own child? The Blanchards became a cause celebre in their community, recipients of charity, kindness, and even a dream home built by Habitat for Humanity. Gypsy, in her wheelchair, was the face of their plight, a symbol of resilience in the face of adversity. Fundraisers were held in her name, strangers sent money, and well-wishers offered prayers. Dee Dee accepted it all, her grip on the narrative tightening with each act of generosity. But beneath the surface, something was very wrong. Gypsy was not the helpless child she appeared to be. By her teenage years, she had begun to question the life she had been forced to live. She had no friends her own age, no independence, no sense of normalcy. She was homeschooled, isolated from the world outside her home, and monitored constantly by a mother who controlled every aspect of her existence. The internet became her window to the world, a place where she could explore the life she had been denied. She created secret social media accounts, chatted with strangers under false identities, and dreamed of a life where she could make her own choices. It was online that she met Nicholas Godejohn, a young man with a troubled past who believed in the fantasy she spun. Their relationship blossomed in the shadows, a secret romance built on shared dreams of escape. What followed was a plan born of desperation. Gypsy and Nicholas hatched a scheme to free her from the prison her mother had built. A prison not of bars and locks, but of lies and manipulation. On the night of June 14th, 2015, Nicholas travelled to Springfield, entered the Blanchard home through a window, and stabbed Dee Dee to death as Gypsy waited in another room. The aftermath was a media frenzy, painting Gypsy as a monster, a daughter who had betrayed the mother who had sacrificed everything for her. But as details of her life emerged, the narrative shifted. She was not the villain the world initially believed. She was a victim, a young woman trapped in a lie so vast it had warped her sense of reality. The abuse she suffered was unlike anything most could imagine. She had been medicated against her will, restrained, and manipulated into believing she was sick, her childhood stolen and replaced by an illusion of illness. The trial that followed laid bare the complexities of the case. Nicholas Gojon, who had wielded the knife, was portrayed as a disturbed individual drawn into Gypsy's world. He was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without parole. Gypsy's plea deal, second-degree murder in exchange for a 10-year sentence, reflected the nuanced reality of her situation. She was both victim and perpetrator, a young woman pushed to the brink who had lashed out in the only way she knew how. The courtroom held a palpable sense of sorrow, a recognition that this was not a simple case of good versus evil, but a tragedy born of years of manipulation. Gypsy's journey since that night has been one of slow, painful awakening. In prison, she has experienced life in ways she never could before. She has made friends, learned to walk without assistance, and even fallen in love again. She has had space to reflect on the past, to grapple with the guilt of what she did and the trauma of what was done to her. Her story has become a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked control, the fine line between care and cruelty, and the devastating consequences of a lie that spirals out of control. Yet, for all its darkness, Gypsy's story is also one of resilience. It is a reminder that the truth, no matter how deeply buried, will always find a way to the surface. And it is a call to look beyond appearances, to question the narratives we are presented with, to recognize that sometimes the most insidious forms of abuse hide in plain sight, disguised as love. Dee Dee's death was not just the end of a life, but the end of a lie that had defined two people for far too long. It was a moment of violent rupture, a sudden tearing away of the veil that had hidden the truth. But it was also the beginning of something else, a chance for Gypsy to reclaim her life, to step out of the shadows and into the light. The road ahead is long, and the scars will never fully heal, but for the first time, Gypsy has the freedom to choose her own path, to make her own mistakes, and to live a life that is truly her own. The house in Springfield still stands, a silent witness to the events that unfolded within its walls. The neighbors have moved on, the headlines have faded, but the questions remain. How could this have happened? How can a mother do this to her own child? And how can a daughter be driven to such extremes? There are no easy answers, only the haunting reality of a story that defies simple explanation. In the end, the murder of Dee Dee Blanchard is more than just a crime. It is a tragedy of love and betrayal, of control and escape. It forces us to confront the darkness that can exist within those we trust most. And it is a reminder that sometimes the most dangerous prisons are not made of bars and locks, but of lies and manipulation. Gypsy's story is not just one of survival, but of the fragile nature of human relationships and the enduring hope that even in the darkest circumstances, redemption is possible.